So there's this guy called Ye, the artist formerly known as Kanye, who's been doing some wacky stuff lately. He's been a wacky guy. He's been a goofy goober, you know, as it's known.
Thing about it, me and Adidas is like, I could literally say anti-Semitic shit and they can't drop me. I could say anti-Semitic things and Adidas can't drop me.
So that happened. So that happened. Is that lost Adidas? That lost Adidas partnership is right behind me, aren't they? Awkward. I have to say, one thing that I find very remarkable about this is that it's Ye is not just like incidentally anti-Semitic, right? Like he's like grinning as he says like you can't stop me, which it seems of course they could because they did drop him. What makes him believe he couldn't be dropped by Adidas? He's a megalomaniac. He has a permanent bipolar manic episode going on, and he experiences megalomania. He is mentally unwell, but it's not just like the unwellness, right? Like he is grinning as he's like, yeah, they can't stop me from like Nazi posting, which I gotta say is a remarkably malicious way of you know, delivering this information. Oh, the alert volume is quite high. I just want the good emotes back. There you go, Moody Mara. Yeah, it's not good. So I wanted to talk a bit, okay? Because he's only gotten worse. You probably saw this. This is a 405 overpass. I know this overpass. I've driven under it plenty of times. So here we have some neo-Nazis, Sieg Heiling, honk if you know Kanye is right about the Jews. Wow, dead naming Kanye, even as they rep his ideology. That's crazy. Goyim.tv. So these are Nazis. I mean, hopefully that's fairly straightforward, you know, not very subtle. But if you're at all even like vaguely aware the state of the online far right, you know that they're in an uproar with supporting Ye at the moment, you know? Yeah, he's also buying Parler, which is just absolutely packed full of neo-Nazis. It's an app owned by Candace Owens' husband, you know, so that's a fruitful partnership right there. Fantastic stuff. And it's really only gotten worse. He said this very explicitly here, which forgive the quality, but
they'll say you're homophobic, and so I empathize with the position of the straight white male. And part of the reason why I empathize with that position is because I know that I'm headed to that position. And what position that is? Top power position.
Oh my God.
Okay.
So he explicitly says, again, because he's too mentally ill to kind of like keep the quiet parts quiet, is just, I do not care about the positions of minorities. I am sympathetic to the positions of the powerful because I am powerful and I will be powerful. I am aligning myself with the white nationalist neo-Nazi crowd, and that is the cart that I'm hitching my horses to. Or wait, the horses I'm hitching my cart to? I'm attaching horses and carts in a way that indicates that I'm on board with this faction. Yeah, there we go. You know, because I think that I will be. Yeah, it's basically like the Candace Owens bit, but I feel like this right here, like for anybody who still believes that this is just some kind of like misguided but earnest and sincere expression of his eccentric political beliefs, this is literally as explicit as you can get. It is not possible to be more explicit than this. It is very straightforwardly like, this is the group that will be in power. These are the powerful people. You know, sort of directly admitting then that he acknowledges like white privilege, right? With you know, with the like, oh well, this is the powerful group that I'm sympathetic to. And that is why I'm with them. You know, it's just about power. It is not about it's not about like sincere political affectations. It's just about power. No, he is class conscious. Yeah, this right here is an expression of class consciousness. You know, it comes much more easily to the wealthy than it does to the poor. You know, he can very like directly and explicitly acknowledge like, yeah, um, I don't have to side with the little guy anymore, you know? I can just explicitly be a neo-Nazi as a black man because I am wealthy and powerful, and that gives me the freedom to choose my allegiance more freely than others might. Truly remarkable stuff. Bosch, I've seen a lot of people calling Kanye crazy for saying these things, but I've yet to see one person on the internet debunk anything he's saying. From Deadass, I don't know if this is a bait. He's not saying anything. I've seen his interviews, Yeez. I've seen him talking with other people. I've seen the stuff that he says. He's not saying anything. It is legitimately deranged rambling. He's not, I'm not using this euphemistically. He is not making claims that can be falsified. The stuff that he says is just a stream of consciousness expression of his weird combination of like a persecution complex despite being incredibly powerful and megalomania. That's legitimately it. The few times that he's made explicit claims have been in line with his Hebrew Israelite tendencies, which is like, no, the original 12 tribes of of Israel are not modern black people. That is not true. I mean, you know, it goes to like the Hoteps. Yeah, like when he makes direct and explicit claims in that purview, you know, like so we'll like debunk him by what, like being aware of literally any history at all. With regards to like the anti-Semitism, he doesn't even try to back it up. He's just like, oh yeah, well, we're the real Jews and other Jews the fake Jews, and those Jews hate us and they control everything. Which, there's not even really like a claim there to dig into. I mean, I've argued with the JQ stuff before. There was something that I found especially like pointed. There was this, just one of a million like right-wing grifters on Twitter who said like Kanye has called out George Soros by name. Finally, yes, or something like that. And it's like the woman who said that is essentially just saying like, oh, thank God, Kanye has settled on the anti-Semitic euphemism that the right has adopted rather than being like explicit about it. You know what I mean? It would be like a Republican politician like saying something like, yes, Richard Spencer has finally called out Black Lives Matter for being anti-white, you know? It's like, wait, hold on. So are we just admitting then that the explicit politics are just hating black people and you're just like sort of waiting for them to settle on the acceptable euphemism, which is of course true, you know? That is true. Right-wing politics, at least since the Nixon administration, has largely been about finding ways to euphemistically capture the anxieties and fears of bigoted people and weaponize them politically without like directly acknowledging that that's what they're doing. But it's getting more explicit, you know? I mean, it's getting worse. Obviously, the death of the euphemism, so on and so forth. But anyway, a more recent, you know, a more recent engagement. The Holocaust Museum of Los Angeles offered Ye a private tour, hoping it would change his views. West turned their invitation down and said Planned Parenthood was his Holocaust museum. Now the LA Holocaust Museum is being flooded with anti-Semitic messages and threats. In addition to the anti-choice stuff, you know, obviously, this is just Holocaust denial. Like saying Planned Parenthood is his Holocaust museum is basically saying that the Holocaust museum isn't, you know? Like, it's like, yeah, well, you know, yours is the fake one, this is the real one. It's not at all surprising that somebody who's just been explicitly saying, like, I'm going to go DEFCON on Jews, the Jews control everything, we're the real Jews. Like, it's not surprising somebody like that would be a Holocaust denier. Yeah. I mean, what are we to learn from this? I guess, like, at the end of the day, the issue is that, like, his anti-Semitism is completely self-reaffirming, right? This is the problem. It's why it's so hard to get people off anti-Semitism, and it's why, like, anti-Semitism seems to be, like, the end state of basically every conspiracy theory, which is that the mythology of anti-Semitism is one in which they control everything. So Ye getting, like, socially punished, like losing his Adidas partnership, seeing the views on his stuff plummet, getting the documentary on him dropped, like, all of this just reaffirms it. It's like, oh, of course I'm facing social repercussions for my neo-Nazi talking points, you know? Obviously, because the Jews control everything. And there's no real way out of it, right? At the end of the day, like, the fact that he explicitly said, I am siding with the powerful white people because I am also powerful and I just want power and they are with me and they will like me because I am powerful. This should dispel any notion of this being like a sincere expression of his political beliefs. It's just about power. He's mentally ill. There's no reason to listen to him. There's not. There's nothing. Intelligence is highly compartmentalized, you know? You can be a genius musician, but in the rest of human discourse, you can be insanely stupid. But this isn't just stupidity. It's illness and malice. I mean, it's hate, right? It's stupidity is innocuous sometimes. Stupidity is potentially innocent, naive, you know? But this isn't any of those things. The man is up there, like doing his podcast rounds, like palling around with the far right. He gave those White Lives Matter shirts to a bunch of like Skid Row people in Los Angeles. He's talking about how they can't drop me for being anti-Semitic. Now what, Adidas? You know, oh, you know, repeating Nazi conspiracy theories, and explicitly saying like, yeah, I'll do any of this. I'll do all this because nobody can touch me. I'm powerful and I side with the powerful. This isn't just like casual, oh, he's mentally ill but quirky. He's just an evil person. He's just evil and hateful. There's really no reason, like, at all to treat this any more seriously than, like, you would, like, the insane, half-bred, mentally unfit, like, son of an heiress or whatever who just despises ethnic people, you know? It's just properly mentally ill. What are your thoughts on where this leads? I feel really bad about this. Stop asking me that question. Everyone in chat wants me to play Nostradamus whenever we talk about bad stuff. It's bad now, it'll get worse in the future. My answer has always been the same. I don't know where exactly, I don't know for a fact, you know, where everything ends up. You know, obviously this is very bad. If anything, if anything, I think the most immediate politically salient thing that you can get from this is the fact that Republicans are just basically fully endorsing this. You have a full-on, like, open, like, multi-hundreds of millionaire neo-Nazi, just with none of the euphemism that people like Richard Spencer or even Nick Fuentes engage in. Like Ye makes Nick Fuentes look like some kind of subtle mastermind of dog whistling, you know? Just no ambiguity at all. Just JQing, like, openly, shouting it from the rooftops, explicitly, over and over and over again. And Republicans are fully endorsing this, just completely. They're backing him to the extent that they can. They're refusing to call him out, and that's because they're testing the water, you know? If Ye can sort of pull the popular front here, you know, if he can pull people over, if he can sort of legitimize these positions, who do you think people like that vote for? Who do you think people who are afraid of Jews controlling the world vote for? It's not Democrats, I'll tell you that much. Did you see that he showed up uninvited to Skechers to try to get a new deal for his shoes and got thrown out? That's funny. Ah, more proof the Jews control everything. Ooh. Ye is making a quick move to find new home for his Yeezy shoes, hitting Skechers headquarters to talk with the company's honchos, but immediately got turned away. That's funny. That's such a desperate move. I can't believe I'm looking at a TMZ article. I really don't like the fact that Kanye's, like, messaging here is just being referred to as anti-Semitic comments, right? He didn't, listen, an anti-Semitic comment would be like him offhandedly saying something like Jews are better with money. This has been multiple weeks of explicit JQing. Like this has been not just like incidentally saying it, but going on podcasts to talk about it, like having to have it edited out of Tucker Carlson's hair. This is like a campaign of Nazi propagandizing. Collab with MyPillow? Yeah, maybe. His wax figure has also been removed by Madame Tussauds. Really? Oh, that was fast. There are some people in the black community. There are some people in the black community who are upset that when Ye made anti-black statements a couple years ago, like slavery was a choice, a bunch of people didn't drop him, but with the anti-Semitic stuff, they are. And there's a very simple reason for that, okay? And I'm gonna keep it 100 with you, okay? Well, there are two reasons. One of them is that most of Ye's, like, holdings and his business relations and everything are associated with, like, liberal entertainment media, right? And liberal entertainment media, as much as they may pretend to be like woke and racially aware, are not. And the issues of black people are not taken as seriously. That's one. For two, you have to understand that like barely coded racism against black people, if nobody ever did business with people like that, nobody could ever do business with any like conservative person. Because like let's be real, slavery was a choice is barely that farther along than basic Republican talking points on black culture being why they can't make it in society. Like seriously, our general messaging on black people in America is so far right that like you would basically disclude any kind of conservative engagement from business, which okay. However, what Kanye's been doing recently, the multiple weeks of JQing, I would consider to be like a much more express and explicit form of bigotry, in my opinion. Frankly, I think a lot of it is also that like how much hot water did Ye get in with the black community after the slavery was a choice comments? Because I saw a bunch of progressive outrage for it, but I don't know how much. I think can I make kind of like an assumption here? I think, and you can tell me that if I'm wrong on this, right? I think that a lot of black people who like Ye have been uncomfortable to disavow him because even if he said some racist anti-black shit, he's still like their guy. A lot of people, when they think of Ye, they think of like, George Bush doesn't care about black people, like a legendary musician, like one of the reps of the black entertainment community. So I think that for a lot of black people, there's like a discomfort with like pulling him out of that because there was more sympathy for his mental illness and like, oh, maybe when he said slavery was a choice, it was more of this like radical individualist kick, but I think we can move past that now, right? Like we no longer have to pretend that this is just some incidental like quirky, politically maverick messaging. It's just very plain bigotry. I think back then people thought he was doing this just to get attention. Well, you know what? Look at where that gets you. Look at where that attitude towards like billionaires being reactionary gets you. I don't know why we ever like accepted or normalized that. Like, yeah, the most powerful people in our society are just like reiterating expressly bigoted talking points. Like, oh yeah, oh, just for attention, bro. It's fine. Like, it's such a cope move. And I get reactionaries are going to do that, like, on their own because they want to play cover for it. But there's no reason for us to do that, Yeah, they said the same thing with Trump. They said the same thing with Trump. They did. They said the same thing. It was like, oh, Trump's not going to win. Oh, he's just doing all this crazy far-right stuff for attention. There's no shot. This isn't like electorally viable. This isn't politically efficacious. And then, oh, wow, he was the president. He made a bunch of Supreme Court and circuit court appointments, and now we got to deal with that forever. Great. Now we're going to lose our democracy because all the CNN and MSNBC people were, like doing the chicken dance around their studio thinking, let's make fun of this guy. Let's just give him hundreds of millions of dollars in unpaid airtime and advertisement. I've unironically seen people say he is a genius to use this to get out of his contracts. People will cope their way out of like realizing that their parasocial heroes are bad people in a lot of ways. It's complicated. Yeah, talk about learning the entirely wrong lesson from this. Damn, you really exposed the fact there was no black infrastructure / ownership at a high level when it comes to music, fashion, or finance. Don't JQ in response to it's like, well, of course, this is where he's getting backlash because the Jews control Hollywood. Jesus Christ. This is the, you're doing the thing. You're doing the thing here. That's the lesson a lot of normies seemingly took from the whole thing. Okay, I've said this before and I'll say it again, but like, there is a lot of anti-Semitism in the black community, and it does not get addressed because nobody takes that shit seriously when it comes from black people. When white people are openly anti-Semitic, it gets taken more seriously because everyone can draw the very easy, like, optical, like, Nazi comparison because they're white, and being Nazi is very associated with being white, obviously. but like anti-Semitism from black people is not uncommon, and it just gets not. This person's feed is insane. They do one tweet, then retweet like 70 people quote tweeting them. Okay, never mind. Do you deny that anti-Semitism gets you canceled to an extent that literally nothing else does? Yeah, I do deny that. Yi is full on like multiple weeks of Nazi posting. This is like basically unprecedented. Yes, I do deny that. Yeah. The equivalent of this would be like a celebrity like going on like 3 weeks of podcasts talking about how women are dogs and how like and how they're subhuman, they don't deserve to vote or whatever. Like they would lose a lot of fucking contracts after that too. Or this isn't incidental. Andrew Tate? And well, Andrew Tate's not a Hollywood celebrity. He didn't start in those spaces. Do you understand what I'm talking about here? This is not comparable. Also, like Yi made the one comment like slavery was a choice, which again, fully idiotic. But if he had done this massive like campaign of pushing this like further and further, he would have seen those consequences back then too. Yeah, like yes, Luis Farrakhan does the same thing. Some esports CEO was partying with Tate and got forced out of the league, lol. Yeah. People are trying to treat... It's really f***ed up, dude. People are trying to treat this like some kind of, oh, of course he's facing consequences now because you only get in trouble when you speak ill of the Jews. It's multiple weeks of Nazi posting. I don't know what you want. You think that if like I don't know, Tom Hanks was just like, yeah, let me spend like 3 weeks talking about the racial inferiority of Hispanic people, or so, you think that he wouldn't lose a bunch? Like you don't think like again, it's not incidental anti-Semitism. It's this persistent, like high level, constant. You know. Anyway, I'm gonna get irritated talking about this because like people are using the fact that Kanye is anti-Semitic and JQing in order to justify the JQ. Remember what I said about it being a permanently like self-reinforcing conspiracy theory? Remember what I said? Because anytime you face social consequences for anti-Semitism, they're like it's f***ed up, because if you're anti-Semitic and you face social consequences, then it's like, oh, of course I did, because the Jews control everything. But if you're racist against black people while also being anti-Semitic and you get in trouble for being racist against black people, then it's like, oh, of course I got in trouble for being racist against black people because the Jews want to like silence us white men for speaking the truth. So it's like, it's always, literally any time any consequences are faced for reactionary behavior, it gets reattributed to Jewish people, whether they had anything to do with it in any way or not. It's infinitely self-affirming. It feeds into itself forever, you know? Even Mel Gibson was able to come back from anti-Semitism. Well, it took him a while. But if Mel Gibson had gotten stopped by a black cop and he had been like shouting the N-word drunkenly and saying like black people are bad, like he also would have been canceled for that. That also would have happened. That's not 100%, you know? About the perceived double standard of racism versus anti-Semitism, I think it's because no one can face legitimate consequences for racism towards black people publicly unless wider white society deems it wrong as well. So, okay, anti-Semitism in America 101. Okay, here's what you guys have to understand, okay? Western society has been anti-Semitic broadly for a very long time. This has not been uniform. This has not been hegemonic in every place, but damn close, damn near it, all right? There have been notable examples of you know, deviances from this pattern. Here's a popular one. Alexander Hamilton actually grew up with an immigrant Jewish community in what was the Caribbean, and it was like very pro-Jewish his entire life. Thought they were the chosen people, was very sympathetic to them. Interesting stuff like that, you know. But for the most part, anti-Semitism has been, you know, a very sort of widely and almost universally accepted tenet of Western ethnic and religious biases. A lot of this is the Catholic Church. You know, the Catholic Church blamed Jews for the death of Jesus Christ up until like the 50s, which is insane because Jesus Christ was a Jew, and the Jews who were complicit in the execution of Jesus Christ only did so because they were subject to the colonial power of the Romans. It was the Romans who did that. The Romans were also persecutory towards Catholics for years afterwards. So I look, whatever. My issues with how long it took to get to the Vatican II aside, for yeah, also Jesus had to die for salvation. What are you going to complain about that? You want Jesus to die at like 78 from like falling off a horse or something? And then it's like, oh, well, he didn't die for our sins. You're all born sinful now. Okay, whatever. Look, in America, all right, anti-Semitism was pretty prominent for a long time, all right? And then something happened that made anti-Semitism less generally acceptable. It was called World War II. Now, the thing is, the Nazis made a lot of things that Americans liked look less good. Eugenics, anti-Semitism, explicit white nationalism, these were all things that were really popular in the United States until World War II, at which point making Adolf Hitler the universal bad guy really took the wind out of some of these ideas, but they never went away, It just became less socially acceptable to promote these ideas. So like the modern eugenics movement was a largely American creation. Obviously, it got a very bad rap when it got associated with the Nazis, but eugenicists still existed, they still promoted their work, and their ideas continued to fester in their respective communities. Anti-Semitism, the same can be said. Now here's a kicker, all right? Anti-Semitism in particular had kind of like a weird offshoot relationship in the United States after World War II ended. And the reason for that is because there are two conflicting priorities here. One of them is the just sort of pre-existing anti-Semitic drive, which has so much historical weight behind it and so much conspiratorial, like, perceived legitimacy that it's really difficult to overwrite in just a single generation, And the other one is a fascination with Israel. See, Israel, the Jewish state that was, created in the Middle East, Palestine, we all know the big dealio. In addition to it serving as an effective, like, Western bulwark, American military base, and beacon of democracy in the Middle East, the control of the Holy Land by the Jews is a tenet of fundamentalist Christians' rapture prophecy. In order for the rapture to take place, for Jesus Christ to return to the earth and cast down the wicked and raise up the believers, several preconditions have to be met, including control of the Holy Land by the Jewish people. And as a product of this, listen, anti-Semitism is really, 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 really common. It's extremely common in the United States, and it's extremely common abroad. Jewish people, per capita, are recipients of more hate crimes than any other ethnic group in America. They are massively disproportionately targeted for hate crimes. The thing is that Israel is an explicitly Jewish state, and support of Israel is almost uniform amidst American politicians, sometimes because they're neocons who just want an American military base in the Middle East, sometimes because they're liberals who sort of ostensibly promote democracy, often at the expense of marginalized groups like the Palestinians, and sometimes because fundamentalist Christians are obsessed with the fulfillment of their doomsday prophecy. So, with all of that being said, with all of that being acknowledged, anti-Semitism is everywhere, but it's very quiet in America. And that's the thing, okay? People think that the fact that you can't be openly anti-Semitic against Jews like anywhere in America without getting canceled is some kind of like special status or privilege to Jewish people. It's not. It's actually the opposite, because anti-Semitism is pervasive and omnipresent, but we're just sort of we're expected to accept it in the implicit form, but in the explicit form, it is denounced in favor of the implicit. So conspiratorial anti-Semitic signaling, incredibly common. The generic like dog whistling against like powerful elites and bankers and Hollywood control, all of that totally fine in politics. In politics, you can basically build an entire platform off of using anti-Semitic conspiracy theories to promote your political position and just leave it there. And you can just do that. You can just do that for your whole campaign. The only thing you can't do is explicitly name the Jews. And that's the dark bargain that America struck. That's like the monkey's paw. After World War II, you know, I wish there would no longer be any explicit anti-Semitism in the United States. Okay, and the monkey's paw curls, and now we have a very anti-Semitic country where it's just accept. We have so many euphemisms, you know. Think of how many euphemisms there are for the JQ. Like, actually think for a second. Like, really think. How many ways can a person say Jews without saying Jews? There's like a million. Soros, Hollywood, coastal elites, bankers, globalists, the Illuminati, you know, the deep state. There are like a billion, and they're used all the time, constantly. The Rothschilds, yeah, postmodern neo-Marxists, cultural Marxism, which is of course a modern iteration of cultural Bolshevism, the neo-Nazi or the Nazi conspiracy theory, like lab coats, Frankfurt School, yeah. Yeah, George Soros, of course, like New World Order, Great Reset, constantly. You can do this in so many ways, and it's so ubiquitous, and it's used so often that we don't even know if a person's being anti-Semitic when they say they anymore. That is how anti-Semitic the United States is. We have a political culture built around implicit anti-Semitism. And people think that somehow the fact that this is omnipresent but implicit means that this is somehow like some kind of privilege for Jewish people. Like, you know, oh, wouldn't it be nice to be so powerful? An entire country's politics are basically entirely oriented around anti-Semitic conspiracy theories, but they can't explicitly say the Jews. So I guess Jewish people are like, fine, you know, it's like, oh, I guess that's actually their privilege, which is an insane way of thinking about it. Completely insane. You know, this is one of the reasons why Republicans are totally on board with what Yee's been doing lately with all the explicit, like, Nazi posting, anti-Semitic stuff. It's because they know that anti-Semitism is just one of the great rallying cries of their base. Anti-Semitism is just one of the, it's like the glue that holds together reactionary movements. Fascists need an enemy that is simultaneously weak and powerful, without and within, a part of society, but also not a part of society, that pretends to be part of the in-group it isn't. And Jews just fit that imagined enemy pretty perfectly, so they just keep using them over and over and over and over again. So that's the state of affairs with anti-Semitism in this country right now, you know? Just always keep this in mind. It's an incredibly anti-Semitic country. We just, and not to mention, like, there's a lot of ways in which our education on this is slipping. Wasn't there a stat saying something like 2/3 of Gen Zers don't know or doubt the 6 million number? Like 2/3 don't know about the Holocaust, or they don't know for sure if it was 6 million or something. Survey finds shocking lack of Holocaust knowledge among millennials and Gen Z. Oh, and Gen Z, that's good. 63% of those surveyed did not know 6 million Jews were murdered in the Holocaust. Over half of those thought the toll was under 2 million. So this is the so-called progressive generations. This is the young people. While all the liberals are tapping their watches, waiting for the old people to die so we can all be progressive or whatever. You know, an enormous portion that didn't teach it super great in schools. Why do you think that is? You guys know that most of our textbooks are made by like conservative. What's that person, or is it the Texas Instruments? Who are the like 1 or 2 companies that make like all of our fucking textbooks? You know, which are conservative. They are Pearson. Yeah, they are conservative. I wonder where we get our info from and why. Lest we forget there was a concerted effort from Thatcher to airbrush a lot of this. Yes. Anti-Semitism is the glue that holds together populist conservative movements. It has been basically forever. How do you even convince people to stop being anti-Semites? Well, that's the problem. You know, with all of this being euphemized and left implicit, it's actually really, 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 really difficult to, like, even get people to understand the extent of this. I don't think a lot of people understand what it must feel like to be Jewish. And also, frankly, the far right will call anyone Jewish. They call me Jewish. I grew up in a Jewish neighborhood. My family goes back to Catholics, Irish and Polish Catholic, respectively. But that doesn't matter. My father trained to be a priest, but you know, they'll call me Jewish too because I grew up around them, or I grew up in Hollywood or whatever. So, but like, you to see like non-stop anti-Semitic signaling everywhere, you know, which is essentially just a reaffirmation of the Nazi conspiracy theories, just buried one level of abstraction below the surface. Pearson gave us this blessed image in their textbook. Okay, well, maybe Pearson's okay if this is, wasn't your father called Hollywood in that Caleb Maupin book? Well, Caleb Maupin is a Nazi. He constantly talks about Jewish people. Like, he constantly Soros posts. Why is he white? He's chilling. White Jesus? How is this Jesus? It's a pharaoh. Okay. All right, cut it out.